Hello, everyone. I am chatting today with Misha Gajewski, who is here in Toronto as well. And I'm so excited to talk to you, Misha. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. We are both helping out for the 24-hour True Storytelling Festival that's coming up in June. But I wanted to ask you a few questions about your work with the Story Collider.
Sure.
So can you start by telling us a bit about the organization, like what it is, how it works, and what you do with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Story Collider is a nonprofit. They're based in the US actually, but they have shows in the US, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand. Now they've expanded. But yeah, so Story Collider focuses on true personal stories about science. So a little bit of a nerdy twist to your usual storytelling show. And we work with scientists and non-scientists, and our whole kind of ethos is that everyone has a story about science. It doesn't have to be from like your grade 12 bio class, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of what the organization is about. And there are producers across the world, and I am the producer in Toronto along with Minera. And I'm a senior producer now, so I've been with the organization for almost 3 years.
Mm.
Exciting. But yeah, so usually we do live shows where we have people from all different backgrounds come and share their science story on stage. But since COVID, the shows have moved online. So we've been doing that weekly, and we just had our 10-year anniversary last week.
Yay.
So that was
Wow.
exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always ask producers the origin story. Can you start by telling us when you told a personal story on stage for the first time?
Ooh, actually, the first time I told a story on stage was for the Story Collider. And it was after I'd been a producer for a couple of months.
Interesting.
And I felt like such a fraud because I hadn't like gone through the process. I'd just been like coaching everyone else on how to write their story. And I'm
Yeah.
no, you need to like get up on stage and see how nerve-wracking it is, and like to be so vulnerable in front of people.
Mm.
So yeah, I told my first story. It was about when I was 13. I had jaw surgery, and it was like this whole ordeal where I became a living nightmare for my parents leading up to the surgery, and was just like horribly cruel, and
Yeah.
as 13-year-old girls are. So yeah, that was my first experience, and then I've been telling stories ever since.
Okay, so you told a story because as a host you had to?
I didn't have to. I just felt like I should,
Mm. Yeah.
just so I could understand what my storytellers, like when I'm coaching them, what they're
Hmm.
going through and kind of their worries. And also just because I wanted to tell a story. It seemed like
Yeah.
something fun to do.
Hmm. So your coaching with the storytellers, what informed that when you started?
So, do you mean like how did I know
Um,
how to coach storytellers?
yeah.
Yeah, so I've been a science journalist for a while now, maybe 6 or 7 years. So I generally know how to tell a story. And then, kind of when I started with Story Collider, they give you some like tips and tricks and help
Mm.
you learn kind of what makes a good personal story and stuff like that. And I'm still learning every day, even
Yeah.
though I've been doing this for a while now, but like definitely not a seasoned pro like some people out there. But yeah, it was mostly my background with science journalism and being able to um, talk with scientists in a way that gets them to bring out their emotions and
Mm.
feelings, which is something scientists loathe to do.
Yeah.
So I think that part of my background, and because Story Collider works so frequently with scientists who don't have any storytelling experience, that was just kind of where I was coming from, was just getting them to a place where they felt comfortable sharing something personal about themselves that didn't have to do with their work or data.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how does an international organization work? How many people are there? How does it work?
So there are over 50 people. I think we're at like 56. It changes. I'm never too sure.
Yeah.
But so there are producers in kind of every hometown that Story Collider produces a show. So we have like Toronto, there's 2 producers. Vancouver, there's 2 producers. New York, there's like 12 producers because everyone lives in New York, and they've started doing shows by borough because that's where they originated. So they've been able to expand, but there's like producers in DC, in Cambridge, in the UK, so all over. But yeah, so we work as like freelancers for the organization. We get paid per show that we produce. But there are 3 full-time employees for the Story Collider. So there's our executive director, Liz Neely, our artistic director, Erin Barker, and our deputy director, Nissa Greenberg, who kind of oversee everything and make sure that everything goes according to plan. And they worry about the big things like getting funders and doing the like podcast bit and hiring. We also have like freelance audio editors who edit the podcast. So we record the stories live on stage, and then we send the audio back to headquarters, I guess. And they will then pick the stories that they want for the podcast, and then Erin Barker kind of groups them and narrates it. But yeah, that's kind of how everything comes together. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
kind of convoluted.
No, it's perfect. So the podcast is pretty big, right? Has it been going on since the beginning of the show, of the organization? Or?
I think so. I think it's been going on pretty much from the get-go. There might have been a time where it was just live shows and it wasn't a podcast, but I think pretty early on they started the podcast.
Yeah, so now you have like millions of listeners, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool little gig.
Yeah. So in Toronto, your show, is it every month or every other month, or?
It's quarterly, so we do 4 shows a year, which isn't a lot, but because for the most part we're working with first-time storytellers, a lot goes into prepping them and making sure that they're ready to go on stage, as well as just like finding kind of, since we work with a pretty niche kind of story topic, finding storytellers can sometimes be a challenge. So yeah, and plus it's a part-time gig, so 4 stories a year is a lot.
Yeah. So talking about the process, like can you walk us through that? How do you find them, and then how do you work with them?
Yeah, so sometimes people pitch us, but that's like pretty rare for people who've never told a story to be like, I want to tell one. So a lot of the time it's me kind of just scrolling through social media and like seeing someone who I think would be interesting and cool, or like I used to go to a lot of local storytelling shows and see if anyone had was telling a story that was vaguely about science. And then my old co-producer, Jesse, he works very heavily in the science communications kind of world. And so he knows almost every scientist in Canada because he used to run Science Literacy Week. Okay. So he is constantly just sending me people being like, this person's cool, get them. Nice. And then it's up to me to be like, hello, I got your contact information from Jesse. And so it's just a lot of cold calling, just being like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And sometimes they say no, but a lot of the time they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Nice. And then, so the storytellers who don't have an idea for a story, do you give them like prompts or ideas yourself? Or?
So the process after I've kind of reached out to them and they've agreed to tell a story, I usually get on a phone call with them and kind of talk through various story ideas. And everyone usually has like something in their mind where they're like, I think I'd like to tell a story about this time. But if I do prompt them, I'm like, think about a big moment for your life, or like some moment where a big change happened for you and how you navigated that. And that usually like triggers something. They're like, oh, there was this one time. And I'm like, great, so we just kind of have like an informal chat where we throw around ideas and think about stuff. And then I kind of send them off to go think more deeply on that and write up a draft. And then they send me a draft and we kind of go from there. And it's a lot of just back and forth and just getting it to a point where it's stage ready.
Right. So you like working with written stories at first?
Honestly, it really doesn't matter to me. If they want to send it written, great. If they want to send an audio recording, that works too. I find that most people, especially scientists, like to write out their thoughts first. So that's just usually what I end up getting. Sometimes it's just a bullet point list, which is great too. But we work with whatever we get.
Okay, nice. And then, so the night of the show, being a producer means you're also hosting. How is that for you? Are there any challenges? Have you learned lessons?
Oh God. So I didn't want to be a host when I first signed on to be a producer. I was like, no, I just want to work behind the scenes. Like, I don't want to be on stage.
Don't we all?
Yeah, like I am not someone who likes to speak publicly, which is very strange considering what I do now for a lot of my job. But yeah, so I guess for like show date, there's a lot of stuff that's not just working with storytellers. So you have to like book venues and like deal with all the marketing and all of that stuff. And then the hosting, I co-host, so the other producer is on stage with me. So it's nice to have someone that you can bounce things off back and forth with. But right from the get-go, it was a very strange experience for me. And I like actually had to work a lot at being comfortable on stage. And even now I'm still not like super in my element when I'm up on stage. But my old co-producer and we took an improv class together.
Oh, wow.
And just to kind of understand how to like do the yes and like the give and take and to react and not like freeze up and stuff. I hated it. I thought it was the worst thing I've ever done. I walked into the like class studio and the person's like, hi, are you here for improv? And like jazz hand me when I walked in and I'm like, ew, no, I don't want to do this. And like the only reason I stayed was because Jesse was coming and I'm like, oh, if I leave, I'll like abandon him. So I had to do this. And Jesse, being Jesse, if you've ever met him, he is like a Labrador in human format. He's just like the happiest go lucky, like game for anything, like just throws his heart and soul into everything. And so he's just having a grand old time pretending to mow a lawn in a class. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I don't want to be here. But it like, as terrible as improv is for me, and how terrible I think in general it is for like any introvert.
Yeah. Oh my God. Tell me about it.
It did help with just learning like that mistakes are okay. Like you can fail and it's totally fine. And then I also with Story Collider, we have a lot of really incredible people who are producers. So we have comedians and performers, and so just drawing on like our own kind of pool of people, I've learned a lot from them. And about like how to craft a bit so that you have kind of little anecdotes for when you're on stage to like keep the show going and that kind of thing.
Cool. I totally relate to like feeling a bit cringy about like improv because like, I
So
don't see myself like
yeah,
doing
and I
it.
think like my first introduction to improv was going to like a friend of a friend's like improv at a bar thing,
Yeah,
and just me watching it being like, this isn't funny and I hate it. Why would
yeah,
I ever like try and be one of them?
yeah,
And like I will never do improv ever again, but it's good to know that you can make a complete ass of yourself and no one really
yeah,
cares.
yeah. No, that's a good lesson. But I feel like improv is a field where the chance for it to not work is very big. And so that's why I'm the same. Like, I don't really love being in the audience for that because, like, if I don't have time for, for it to be bad, like, I'm there, it's too risky for me. But
Yeah, yeah, I think like there is a lot of really bad improv, and oh, when I go out and like want to see something, I want to see something that like people have spent months practicing and like
yeah,
honing their craft. I don't want to see them just throw things at the wall.
yeah.
I would just go watch a toddler if I wanted that. It's more comedic value for me.
Um, so yeah, hosting. Let me see if I've gone through all my questions. I think so. It's cool. I think I have a better idea now, and our many viewers have a better idea on how you work with the Story Collider. And so the Story Collider and Bodies of Stories and the Mesrab, who's a storytelling organization in Amsterdam, Netherlands, are how do I put it? Founding members with Replay Storytelling in Toronto of the 24-hour True Storytelling Festival online that's coming up in June. How did you decide to help out with that?
So Paul and I have been friends for a couple years since kind of I got into the storytelling scene.
Sorry, can you say who Paul is?
Oh, Paul is the director or
Artistic
like
director.
yeah of Replay Storytelling, which used to be called Confabulation, but no longer. Anyway, so I have done his show a couple of times and we've been friends for a while, and he called me up kind of like out of the blue and he's like, I have a crazy idea. And I'm like, great. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
And so he kind of pitched the storytelling festival to me, and I was like, awesome, I'd love to be involved. And because Story Collider is a little bit of a larger organization, I did have to get permission from my directors that we could be involved. So I pitched it to them and they said, sounds cool. What do you need from us? And I'm like, virtually nothing. I will do this. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how I got involved. And it's been kind of a wild ride ever since.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about what you do, what you've been doing for the festival?
Yeah. So I've been, apart from kind of curating the Story Collider portion of the lineup, I've also been helping out with kind of press and social media and promo, because that's what I do in my other jobs.
Yeah.
So I have some connections within the press and stuff. And I've also been trying to find sponsors, but it's very difficult and not my forte of just being like, hello, do you have money? Would you like to give it to us? I'm like bad at that in my own life. So
yeah.
So yeah, it's been harder, and especially during this time, I think not a lot of organizations have spare cash right now. So it's been quite challenging on that front.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I think we've what's the term?
Covered it all?
Covered it all. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm very excited for the festival. So the idea, for people who don't know, is that we're going, for 24 hours, we're going to bring the world together to hear true stories told live. And for that purpose, we're going to have different shows joining from different places in the world, and just being part of the live stream for 24 hours. And we're going to have shows in the UK, Amsterdam, probably New Zealand, India, Florida, where else? Regina, Saskatchewan, Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver, somewhere. There's a couple places on the West Coast. There might be somewhere in the middle of the country.
Yeah. So anyway, we're still like working on it, but it's shaping up so nicely. People are so excited. We're going to have people in New Jersey too, producers sort of everywhere and storytellers everywhere. Yeah. So we'll be talking more about that on social media, and yeah, so follow at the Story Collider. Is that right?
I think it's just at Story Collider.
At Story Collider on Instagram, at Replay Storytelling, Instagram and Facebook, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Misha.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.